Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, it was an absolutely historic day yesterday. There is absolutely now no question about it. President Trump, in a long shot bid to now end the war between Russia and Ukraine, yesterday took a very giant step towards achieving what many in the media, what many in the political establishment said was absolutely impossible. He now has gotten Zelenskyy and the European leaders, Europe's top leaders, to agree in a final trilateral meeting that will take place in about a week, maybe 2 weeks. The only thing now they're trying to hammer out is the actual location. Where will this trilateral meeting, or trilat, as Trump keeps referring to it, between Putin, Zelenskyy, and Trump to sign an historic peace deal that will end the dying, the destruction, and the carnage in Ukraine? So here is exactly now what happened yesterday. It was a very different meeting between Midget Man, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and Trump compared to what had happened, that disastrous meeting in February earlier this year, where it descended into a shouting match as Zelenskyy disrespected Trump, J.D. Vance, and the White House. This time, Midget Man actually wore a suit. You know, just a little thing like this. It's nice when you're visiting someone else's home, especially the White House, that, you know, I don't know, dress for the occasion. Call me crazy. He also kept saying thank you. He behaved with more respect, with more humility, and essentially now he knows and understands very clearly that the only chance Ukraine has to emerge from this war with some of its territory, about 80% of its territory intact, and the country surviving this invasion from Russia, is because of the United States, and in particular because of Big Daddy Donald Trump. And so, behind closed doors, Zelenskyy, and this was an incredible photo op, even Trump's most rabid opponents in the media had to tip the hat that they had never, ever in decades covering the White House seen such a White House photo in which you had not just Zelenskyy, you had the Prime Minister of Britain, the President of France, the Prime Minister of Italy, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of Finland, the head of the European Union, the head of the NATO Secretary General, the head of NATO, all of them standing shoulder to shoulder with President Trump, and one after another. It was an incredible sight where they came out and said repeatedly, the reason why we are here today, the reason why peace is nigh, the reason why 3.5 years of bloodshed is on the verge of coming to an end, they all agreed, was due to the efforts, the energy, the passion, the intensity, the drive of one man, Donald J. Trump. And so, here is exactly what happened. Behind closed doors, Europe's top leaders and Zelenskyy agreed now to some fundamental principles that's now going to shape the outline of a deal. One of them is Zelenskyy now, apparently in private, told everybody in the room, I am going to have to concede territory. I will give Putin most of what he wants. And what does he want? Basically, eastern Ukraine, what's called the Donbas, and Crimea. Putin will get the territory that he wants. Zelenskyy is willing to give it up. In exchange, what does Zelenskyy get? Zelenskyy got several things, and this is very important because this is the part now that's going to implicate us, the United States, going forward. The Europeans are now agreeing to bankroll Ukraine's military. Ukraine is going to buy $100 billion. That's 100 billion with a B of U.S. equipment and U.S. weapons paid for through the Europeans. They're basically going to front Zelenskyy the money. This is going to rebuild Ukraine's military after the war is over, so they will be able to resist Russian aggression going into the future. Furthermore, Great Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Finland, not through NATO. They're calling this now NATO Light. These 5 countries are going to give not just security guarantees. In other words, should Russia ever attack Ukraine again, these 5 countries will be obligated to be at war with Russia and to defend Ukraine. And remember, Great Britain is a nuclear power. They have nuclear weapons. France is a nuclear power. They have nuclear weapons. So Russia would be facing not 1, but 2 countries with nuclear missiles. Now, on top of that, the Brits have already said they are going to put British troops on the ground in Ukraine the second that peace deal is inked between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. Britain is going to set up a military base in Ukraine. France says it will set up an air defense systems and an air force base in Ukraine. So there will be European military bases on Ukrainian soil. Now comes the all-important question. What will the United States do? What will Trump do in order to get this deal done? How far is he willing to go? Listen now. Trump hinted at what he's willing to say and what he's willing to do. Roll cut 1, Mike.
The Alaska summit reinforced my belief that while difficult, peace is within reach, and I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table also, like who will do what, essentially. I'm optimistic that collectively we can reach an agreement that would deter any future aggression against Ukraine, and I actually think there won't be. I think that's even overrated, largely overrated, but we're going to find out, and I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure.
Now, the term, you just heard it. We're going to help them, and we're going to help them make it very secure. So Trump then explicitly told the media, the United States will provide Ukraine with military security guarantees. Now, he says he wants the Europeans to take up a lot of the burden. He doesn't want to put U.S. troops into Ukraine. However, if that's what it takes to put the deal over the top, Trump says he is willing to put U.S. forces, even a U.S. military base, on Ukrainian soil. Now, in terms of the Europeans will have more troops, they will have more bases, they will be buying weapons from us to help arm the Ukrainians to the teeth so Ukraine can have massive deterrence against any future Russian aggression. But we are going to be on the hook to protect and defend Ukraine's borders. He's now even willing, if need be, to send a contingent of American troops after the deal is signed to help bolster Ukraine's security. In essence now, Ukraine will have NATO-style protection without actually being formally in NATO. In other words, NATO light, as I said earlier, as in terms of what it's being called. Think of now, this is the plan they have for Ukraine. Think North and South Korea. That's the plan. In other words, they're going to freeze the lines of the lines of contact, as they're called, the military lines as they are now. And then you're going to see two armed camps over this partitioned territory staring at each other and trying to keep each other in check so that one doesn't attack the other, the way we've had on the Korean Peninsula, and that the United States is expected ultimately to defend Ukraine the way we've defended South Korea since 1954. We have currently 29,000 troops in South Korea. I don't know if we're going to have that many troops in Ukraine, but we are definitely now, or Trump is definitely considering putting thousands of American troops in Ukraine, along with tens of thousands of European troops, primarily British, French, Italian, and Finnish. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, it's history. Whether it's good history, bad history, that I leave up to you. And of course, I'll give you my take as well, but there's no question now. What we saw yesterday is akin to, say, Nixon opening up China when he decided to meet with Mao Zedong, have an entente, an entente with the Chinese, détente as it was called at the time, and that changed forever our relationship with China and China's relationship with the world. It is very similar to what took place yesterday. Why? Because there were now massive and major concessions, literally by everybody. So let's start with Russia. Russia clearly now has its back against the wall. Putin has lost about 1 million soldiers, either killed, maimed, wounded, missing, crippled. Trump lowered the boom when it came to these devastating, severe sanctions, tariffs on India, potential tariffs on China. Those are the two countries that buy, the two big buyers of Russian oil and natural gas. Putin realized that Trump could crush Russia's economy and essentially end its war machine in 6 months. And so Putin now facing isolation, wanting an entente with the United States, a thawing in relations, an end to this war, an exit ramp. And of course, he has to show his people something for all the fighting and the dying. So Putin will get the Donbas. What does he give up? Well, Putin's dream of conquering Ukraine is now over. It is now over because apparently at the meeting yesterday, President Trump paused the meeting, called up Putin, interrupted the meeting, called Putin, and said, look, I've got the Europeans now and Zelenskyy. Everybody's on board. There will be massive security guarantees for Ukraine. The Brits and the French and the Italians and the Finns are going to put bases and troops in Ukraine, and Ukraine is going to buy hundreds of billions of dollars of military equipment to beef up their military. It's basically an agreement for near permanent aid for Ukraine and Ukraine's military. And the United States is willing to secure Ukraine's new borders. And if need be, we're willing to put in even thousands of our own troops. Apparently, Putin said he could live with that. After Putin gave the green light, that's when Trump immediately said, we're going to set up a meeting in about a week, first between Putin and Zelenskyy together, to iron out exactly the territory that's going to be ceded, what the new borders are going to look like. And then right after that will be the final trilateral meeting. The trilat, as Trump puts it, between Putin, Zelenskyy, and Trump for a final push on the details, with all three parties signing an historic peace agreement. So Russia gets land in eastern Ukraine. It gets to keep Crimea, but the rest of Ukraine, the 80% of Ukraine, will now be fully absorbed by the West, economically, militarily, geopolitically. Russia will never see another inch of Ukrainian territory without launching World War III against the combined might of the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland. So, in other words, let's not essentially NATO without calling it NATO. What does Zelenskyy get? He has to give up the Donbas, eastern Ukraine. That's a tough pill for him and the Ukrainians to swallow. I understand. But he gets what they've wanted from the beginning. American, Western, full security guarantee, permanent military assistance, and the clear path to the European Union and to joining the West. In essence, it'll be a smaller Ukraine, but it will now be a truly independent Ukraine, free from the Russian sphere of influence, having finally broken away from Moscow's grip. So, Ukraine gets something as well. The Europeans, who, and I'll get to this later in the show, for some inexplicable reason, are absolutely petrified. I'm not kidding. That Putin is the new Hitler. They have really bought this line that Vladimir Putin is the second coming of Hitler, that today it's Ukraine, tomorrow it's Berlin, the day after tomorrow it's Rome, then it's Paris, then it's London. They believe that they are now guaranteeing their security by now beefing up Ukraine's security and essentially limiting Putin's gains to the eastern Donbas and giving security guarantees to the Ukrainian government and to Kiev. So Ukraine will now essentially be absorbed into the EU, and Europe will now completely buttress and reinforce Ukraine's military, economy, and security basically for the next 500 years. The question is, what do we get? We know now what we're willing to give, at least what Trump is willing to give. Trump is going to offer full security guarantees, and if need be, American troops, permanent presence in Ukraine, like we have in South Korea, like we have in Japan, like we have in Germany, like we have in countries all around the world. He then told Zelenskyy, you want to sweeten the pot? You want to give us something? I want you to commit to buying $100 billion in American weapons, American equipment, American drones, and you've got yourself a deal. Zelenskyy went to the Europeans. He doesn't have that kind of money. The Europeans said, we'll loan you the money. Don't worry about it. We'll front it to you. You can make the deal right here, right now. So we are now going to be there defending Ukraine permanently. But Ukraine will be buying many of its weapons from us. So I guess we'll get some jobs, some defense contracts out of it. And we are now going to be the policemen of Ukraine's borders along with the Europeans. This is the deal. There are still details to be ironed out, but this is now the contours of the deal. In about a week, Zelenskyy and Putin will meet. If they can get through that meeting, and Trump says he believes they can, then we are going for a final trilateral meeting. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just very, very quickly. Listen now. This is President Trump in the Oval Office, and he is with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and he was asked point blank by many in the media, have you spoken to Vladimir Putin? Is he on board with all of these security guarantees that Britain, France, the Germans, the Italians, the Finns, and of course you, Mr. President, the United States, are willing to give to Ukraine and pour in all of these hundreds of billions of dollars in arms and weapons to rebuild the military and to put bases on Ukrainian soil, including, if need be, U.S. troops. Listen now to Trump saying, I've got Putin's agreement. In fact, we even I called him in the middle of our meeting with the Europeans and with Zelenskyy, and we are now about to set up a next meeting, first between Zelenskyy and Putin, and then immediately followed by the three of us for a final negotiation that we all hope leads to a deal and, frankly, to a treaty. Roll cut 9, Mike.
Was there any aspect of your discussion with Vladimir Putin that left you disappointed?
Look, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting. Thank you very much.
And the call was made, and Putin said, let's meet again. In other words, these terms are acceptable, and let's make a deal. So Putin wants a deal. Zelenskyy wants a deal. The Europeans want a deal. Trump wants a deal. Everybody wants a deal. My question to you, is this a good deal or a bad deal? Do you want this deal? 617-266-6868 is the number. Mark in Medford. Mark, you're going to kick us off. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. But wait a minute, Jeff. According to ABC and CBS and NBC and MSNBC, the Putin and Zelenskyy talks with Donald Trump were a complete disaster and embarrassment to the country.
You know, Mark, I got to tell you, I've never seen such a dishonest media, and I know they've been disgusting. Ever since Trump walked down the escalator, and it just got worse during his first term, and it got even worse after they stole the election from him. But you even have Zelenskyy praising Trump. You even have the Ukrainians praising Trump. Now, to be honest, Mark, I would praise him too. He's going to give them the one thing they want, which is American boots on the ground and security guarantees for 1,000 years. Basically now we are saving Ukraine. Let's be very clear. Ukraine lost this war, and Trump essentially just won it for them, not on the battlefield, but at the diplomatic negotiating table. And, what the liberals now essentially are saying is, don't give peace a chance, give war a chance. I've never seen anything like this. These are warmongers. These people obviously want to see a nuclear war with Russia. They don't want the killing and the bloodshed to end. If Ukrainians can live with this deal, if Zelenskyy can live with this deal, if the Europeans who are right there, this is their backyard, if they can live with this deal, then what the hell does CBS and ABC News? What's their problem? I mean, Mark, am I wrong?
Jeff, like you always say, you're 1,000% right. It makes me sick to my stomach, Jeff. Like, they can't even come up with an original line where they report it. They all read from the exact same script, and it's word for word of what they want them to say. It's disgusting. Why? I don't understand for the life of me how they get away with it and how these networks are not held accountable and responsible for their actions. I mean, Jeff, they're promoting war. They want war. And it makes me sick to my stomach. No matter what this man does, they're never, ever going to give him credit for. This guy's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and you're going to see him on the cover of Time magazine as Person of the Year.
Mark, drop the mic. You nailed it. I think now he's clearly on the path. There's no stopping him. I mean, anything can happen, obviously, with negotiations and, a monkey wrench can be thrown in, but there is so much momentum now for this deal to be made. It's like a locomotive. It's like a runaway train. And again, this destroys the media narrative. I think that's the reason why they're lashing out. Remember, their narrative is Hitler. Their narrative, he's a dictator. Their narrative is he's going to blow the world up. He's a fascist. He's an autocrat. Well, here he is. What is it now? 5, 6 peace deals already? And now the big one, ending the war in Ukraine? Look, let me put my cards on the table, okay, as the Germans would say. What you saw yesterday is the nightmare for liberals and Democrats. There was Donald Trump standing head and shoulders above all the leaders of Europe. It solidified his position as the statesman of the West, where the Europeans are all admitting, I can play you the cuts. The Prime Minister of Britain, the President of France, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of Finland, the leader of the entire European Union, the Secretary General of NATO, all of them saying the only reason why we are this close to a peace deal is because of Trump. The man that's willing a peace deal is Trump. The man that got Putin to budge and move substantially, Trump. Zelenskyy to move, Trump. All the Europeans to move, Trump. Now, they're saying it. They're literally openly saying it. So Trump now, for good or for ill, is now the leader of the West, the unrivaled, unchallenged statesman of the West. That's what you saw yesterday. And this destroys the entire narrative that the media has built up against Trump, because they're not interested in truth. They're interested in propaganda, as the Russians would say. Now, let me be, again, brutally honest with all of you. I commend his intentions. I commend his diplomatic maneuvering, frankly, his diplomatic genius. As an America First conservative, I don't like security guarantees to Ukraine, and I don't want U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. I don't want it. I think it's turning Ukraine into a tripwire, a potential nuclear tripwire. And so if I was a senator and this deal was presented to me to vote on, I would vote it down. Not because I'm anti-Trump, quite the opposite. I love the guy. I don't believe this serves the direct national interest of the United States. But that's not what the media is arguing. The media, if the one thing they love are the security guarantees. The one thing they love are U.S. forces and U.S. troops potentially in Ukraine. What they can't stand is that the war may come to an end. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Trump now literally on the cusp of what many thought was absolutely an impossibility. The cusp on the impossible, ending the war in Ukraine. He has Europe's top leadership, Zelenskyy, now behind him on the contours, the outlines of a deal. Apparently, he's gotten now Putin to make major concessions on security guarantees for Ukraine with its new borders, should there be a final deal. And I've got to be honest with you. I can see what the Ukrainians get. I can see what the Russians get. I can even see what the Europeans get. Outside of $100 billion military contract that the Europeans are essentially going to pay for on behalf of Zelenskyy, what do we get? And look, I look at a crook like Zelenskyy. I'd love for all of you to tell me if you agree or disagree. I look at a crook like Zelenskyy, and here's what I see now. It's going to be unlimited military financial aid for decades and decades to come. It's going to be even more government corruption. NATO's going to be involved. The Europeans are going to be involved. We're going to be involved, obviously. And look, is Trump a warmonger? No, quite the opposite. But what happens after Trump? We don't know who's going to be the next president or the next president after the next president. With a security guarantee that we're committed to, and potentially even putting U.S. troops permanently in Ukraine, a future Democrat, a future rhino, a future neoconservative could easily start a war with Russia over nothing. Over nothing. And so, honestly, I'm like, why are we rewarding Zelenskyy? And by the way, Ukraine, after yesterday, is going to be swimming in money, drowning, especially in military aid and massive military contracts. Now, the only good thing is we're not on the hook for the money. The Europeans are. We're just going to be selling them all the military hardware. But I mean, Zelenskyy found a way for the gravy train to just keep going and going and going and going. And frankly, the dumb Europeans, led by the Brits and the French and the Germans in particular, if they're willing to waste hundreds of billions of dollars of their people, their taxpayers' money, I don't know what to tell you. But they're going to learn the hard way. Ukraine will steal most of what the Europeans give because that's what the Ukrainian leadership does. 617-266-6868 is the number. Agree, disagree. Anthony in Michigan. Thanks for holding, Anthony, and welcome.
Dr. Kuhner, a blessing as always. How am I coming in on my headphones?
You're coming in loud and clear. The floor is yours. Go ahead, Anthony.
Thank you, sir. You probably saw Maloney rolling her eyes. I'd like to translate that for you. She was saying, these kacherons, these fascinin strundes. Oh, Jeff, let me tell you, there's a lot going on here. First of all, this is a Eurocentric deal. It's not us. It's a paradigm change. We're off the hook here. Now it's the Europeans' problem. The biggest loser, the State Department with their downsizing, with all those people taking the packages and going out with their waving and everybody copying them out. Jeff, they have been barnacles on the ocean liner. The USD money is gone. You know, it's all those three-letter orgs. Trump went in and got it done. All these years, Jeff, John Kerry going to fix this problem, that problem. They didn't do GOTS, okay? This tells you what a cesspool the State Department was. Trump gets it done. Now, tangentially to this is kind of interesting. How are the markets going to respond to this? This is a very positive deal, Jeff.
Well, look, Anthony, if the Europeans want to squander their money on that little tin pot dictator in Kiev, and that's what he is. And I'm going to play a cut later, Anthony. Trump really zinged Zelenskyy yesterday about the fact that he hasn't held an election in forever, how he's canceled elections. Anyway, he was basically, he went as far as he could saying, you have no democratic legitimacy whatsoever. And to his face. So, look, he's a little tin pot dictator who's arresting his political opponents, banning opposition parties, controlling the media, throwing dissident journalists in jail. This is all 1,000% irrefutable. Now, if the Europeans want to get in bed with a corrupt weasel like that guy, that's their business. I just don't want us to backstop it. Now, if the Europeans are willing to buy our weapons, great. If the Europeans want to buy our equipment, great. If they want to spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars buying our stuff, great. What I don't want, and I'm hoping that Trump could somehow weasel out of it, is I don't want us putting any security guarantees for Ukraine's borders, and I certainly as hell don't want U.S. troops in Ukraine, a la South Korea. Seriously. I'm like, another security. We're going to have another tripwire, another security protectorate. We're going to have to give security assurances to another country. And, this is not Cambodia, Thailand, or Serbia, Kosovo. This is the greatest nuclear power in the world, Russia. Up to this point, this was a Russia-Ukraine war. Soon, it could become a war between Russia and the West. And to me, that was the very thing we wanted to avoid. What say you? Final word to you, Anthony.
Of our forces. I think it's very subtle. It's him telling the Europeans, you pick up the tab. This is your baby from now on. We're not going to be the policemen of the world.
Yeah, Anthony, look, I got it. I think, by the way, I even think the Europeans are making a mistake. I wouldn't pick up the tab, but that's their business. Okay, hey, you want to plunk more money down that rat hole in Ukraine? Well, go ahead. Now, we all know they're lining their pockets. Okay, we all know they're on the take. And we all know that, look, we know what the Bidens did in Ukraine. We know what Lindsey Graham did in Ukraine and what McCain did in Ukraine and Victoria Nuland and Obama, and everybody had their hand in the till. So we know the powerful financial economic interests that are at stake. And if not keeping this war going, making sure that the West is enmeshed and constantly intervening in Ukraine's internal affairs. Because they're talking military budgets that to me, they're mind-boggling. These people are insane. I mean, how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars more do you want to keep pouring into that country to buy weapons? But that's their business. I worry about our interests. So what I'm hoping is that Trump basically says, yeah, I'll sell the Europeans the weapons, but no, you guys are going to police the borders. You guys are going to defend Ukraine. You're the ones who are going to have the bases and the troops, not us. I'm hoping that this is how it ends up at the end. But apparently Zelenskyy kept banging that table and saying no American security guarantees, no U.S. troops, no deal. And apparently Trump said, okay, if that's what it takes, I'll do it for the sake of peace. That's the part I don't like, Anthony. And do you know who's drawing up the security assurances for Ukraine? Marco Rubio. And Rubio is a big hawk on Ukraine, always has been. So he and the other national security advisors for the other European countries are going to draw up the security guarantees that every country involved is going to have to give to the Ukrainians. And behind the scenes, Rubio is the one. Rubio wants us to have, he wants us to not just sell the Ukrainians our Patriot missile system. I'm talking like massive air defense system. Rubio wants a military base, an army base in Ukraine with at least 10,000 American troops. And his argument is that's the ultimate tripwire. That's his phrase, not mine. So if Russia ever invades again, the tripwire is going to be dead Americans, and that's going to force us into a war against Russia. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what? You want to put at risk American lives for a potential war, and that would be World War III against Russia over Ukraine? Are you guys on drugs? So, no, I don't want U.S. military bases there, and I don't want U.S. troops there. And look, it's not that I fear it under Trump. I don't. I know Trump would pick up the phone with Putin and de-escalate. What if we get another Biden? What if we get another Hillary? Not them personally, but someone in their mold. What if we get another Bush or another, take your pick, a Mitt Romney, whoever? And then what? Remember, the globalists are itching for a war against Russia. This now puts us right on Russia's doorstep and fully committed to Ukraine and to that corrupt little weasel, that kleptocrat, midget man in Kiev. So, no, look, I understand why the globalists, and they were all globalists in that room. I understand why they were grinning ear to ear. And I understand why Zelenskyy kept shaking everybody's hand over and over again. Because essentially this deal bails out Zelenskyy. But to me, in terms of the American national interest, and putting America first, it puts peace first. It ends the war. And I congratulate Trump for that. But again, at what price? And if you're asking me, I think the price is too high. I'm just being brutally honest. Now, again, to be fair, I want to see all the details. Maybe the commitment is not what they're leaking from the administration. Maybe it's a much weaker, diluted commitment. And if it's just us selling the Europeans the weapons, that's fine. But if it's an actual security guarantee with U.S. troops in Ukraine, Kuhner man's going to oppose. And I would oppose that for any president. It's not being anti-Trump. So that's my position, Anthony. Anthony, as always, thank you very much for that call. Now, just super quick, I want to go to Dave in Western Pennsylvania. But this is another reason why the left is melting down. It's not just that it solidifies Trump as the statesman of the West. It's not just now that Trump will have accomplished in a matter of months what Biden and all the other Europeans could never dream to do. But as I pointed out on X last night, what Trump is now doing is he is systematically dismantling Biden's presidency, or whatever, Autopen, the Mr. Autopen's presidency. Okay, the people who ran his presidency for him. He has now sealed the border. He has begun aggressive mass deportations. He is now stopping radical transgenderism. He is rolling back men in women's sports. He's rolling back Biden's destructive Green New Deal. He's rolling back Biden's destructive inflation. He's rolling back Biden's destructive soft on crime, pro-criminal policies. But notice what he just did in Ukraine. Who started the war in Ukraine? Who provoked the war? Biden. Who incited the war? Biden. Who fueled the war? Biden. Listen now. This is Finnish President Alexander Stubb. This is Finland speaking on behalf of all of Europe. Listen to what he said yesterday. Roll cut 14B. Mike.
I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine.
That is a damning indictment of Joe Biden. What he's saying, diplomatically, but there's no question that President Trump has made more progress in 2 freaking weeks in ending the war between Russia and Ukraine than, as he put it, the last 3.5 years. Well, who was the president for most of those 3.5 years? Joey. So who got the Europeans together? Trump. Who got Putin to the table? Trump. Who moved Zelenskyy? Trump. This is Trump all the way. And just remember, what did the Democrats and Biden say? I can't secure the border. Why? You need to pass legislation. You need to, you've got to pass a bill. We need comprehensive immigration reform. And Trump said, no, all you got to do is exert your authority and enforce the law. Well, Biden kept saying for years, I can't bring peace. I can't do it. Nobody can do it. Ukraine has to win on the battlefield. Ukraine can't win on the battlefield. It was a pipe dream. They never could beat a military superpower like Russia. Outside of the United States fighting the war on their behalf, Ukraine cannot beat Russia. Nothing against the Ukrainians. They are very good fighters, very patriotic. They have fought bravely and courageously. But Russia is too big, too populated, too powerful. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. So, the only man that has been able to end this war is Donald Trump. He is undoing all of Biden's disastrous presidency, and the Europeans are applauding him every step of the way. 617-266-6868. Mary in Hingham. Thanks for holding, Mary, and welcome.
Picking me? I'm 100% with you. I do not want us to say that we're going to secure the border there. That's insane. We're trying to get away from these people. The guy's a crook. That Zelenskyy is a total crook. Everyone knows it. And sealing the deal for me is that Hillary wants it. Hillary's a crook. So I don't know about Rubio. I don't know why he wants this war, but to me, the answer is no. I understand that people will stop dying, and I get it. But you know what? Their governments need to take care of it, not ours. And I do not want one person from the U.S., even 50 years from now, pulled into a war with Russia. I just don't want it. You know, those are going to be our grandchildren or whatever, great-grandchildren, whatever it is. I don't want it. And it's our responsibility to protect them now because they're writing this now. That's my opinion.
Mary, say Trump goes ahead. Apparently now it's breaking as I speak to you. They've already got the plans in place for a meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin. Both sides apparently have now agreed, which was pretty much known yesterday, but now it's been formalized. And then right after this meeting, it's going to be in about a week, maybe 2 weeks, but they're saying very soon they will meet face to face. And then within an hour or two after their meeting, they will sit down with Trump for the final trilateral meeting where they're going to hash out and hammer out and sign a peace deal. So we are very close now to signing this thing. We still don't know all the details, but say the details are what the administration is leaking, which is U.S. troops in Ukraine and security guarantees for Ukraine. Will this hurt your support for Trump? I'm just curious. Will you not support Trump as much as you did before, or will you still continue to support Trump?
100% behind Trump up until this point, but I really think that for me, I'm going to look at it again. I think a lot of this is vanity, honestly. I think he wants that Pulitzer Prize or whatever it's called, and, you know, he wants to be like Churchill or something, and I think that's his downfall. He likes the attention. He likes people telling him he's great, and he is great. I love him. I've voted for him 3 times. I think he won 3 times. But this is really scary to me, and I think he just needs to – I'm hoping that people are listening, that he needs to not promise that we will secure Ukraine. That's what I think.
I'm with you. Mary, I'm with you all the way. I'm hoping Trump, you know, at the last moment says, no, everybody's getting too excited. That's what I hope he says. The Europeans will secure Ukraine's borders, will give you the weapons, but that's it. That's what I'm hoping. We'll see. Mary, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Okay, let me throw this log, and it's a massive log now, on the fire. I want to take as many of your calls as possible. If, as it appears likely, not certain, but likely, that Trump will give a full security guarantee to Ukraine and even deploy thousands of U.S. troops, even a base in Ukraine alongside the Brits, the French, the Germans, the Italians, and the Finns to secure Ukraine's independence, sovereignty, and its new borders. A, will you support this decision? And B, if you're a longtime Trump supporter, will this hurt your support for the president? Will you no longer support the president? Or are you just going to be disappointed and demoralized, but you're still going to support him? This is the only way, to me, the closest analogy I can think of. I believe it's going to be like China and Nixon. Nixon's opening to China. At the time, everybody thought it was a magnificent diplomatic move. There was Nixon in Beijing. At the time, it was called Peking. But anyway, in Beijing, toasting with Mao, drinking with Mao, saluting Mao. Mao was saluting him. And that opened up China to the West. And everybody said, yes, brilliant move. It counters the Soviet Union. But it ended up giving to the rise of China, which we are paying for dearly to this day. And by the way, I thought Nixon was a very good president. One of the best presidents in the last 100 years. Not the best, but one of the best. 617-266-6868 is the number. Dave in Abington. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Dave?
Jeff, I'll tell you, why should we have to give Ukraine anything, Jeff? They've had enough, and there's nothing to show for it. And as far as the peace agreement, yeah, we want it done and over with, but why should we have to keep on giving them everything when we've given enough to everybody and all over the country, Jeff? We've given every country everything and nothing to show for it afterwards. We shouldn't have given Zelenskyy anything, especially for the time when he came the first time and started acting like a punk in the White House and everything else. He shouldn't get nothing from us, Jeff. And no boots on the ground, nobody shooting anything for Zelenskyy. Let the Europeans, let them deal with it. We got enough trouble here as it is, Jeff, without having to give Zelenskyy everything he's always wanting. Oh, we're going to give them $1 billion in weapons. Why, so we can sell them on the black market for profit? I don't trust him, Jeff. He's a snake in the grass, I should say.
Well, Dave, I agree with you. So that's why all I can do is piggyback off of what you're saying. Look, what they're planning now in Ukraine is very similar to what we did in Korea. In fact, Korea is the analogy they keep using. Yesterday at the summit, and now it's, a little bit different. It's not a peninsula. Ukraine, it's slightly different. But basically, you have North Korea, South Korea. American troops, about 28 to 29,000, have been stationed in South Korea for over 70 years. 70 years. Keeping the peace between North and South Korea. And it looks like they're going to be there forever. Now, we don't have 28,000 troops policing our own southern border. I mean, we haven't, I know Trump has secured and sealed the border. I mean, I get it. But he's not going to be in power forever. So we're not even putting 28,000 troops on the Mexican border to guarantee no future border invasion. We're going to put another, I don't know what the number is going to be, but another 10, 20, 30,000 into Ukraine? So what? It's going to be like South Korea? So we're going to be there for 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, 150 years? And remember, if there's ever war between North and South Korea, we're on the hook. That's a tripwire among many tripwires. So, look, if you want, one day I will literally name all of the countries in the world that we are militarily obligated to defend. It is over 100 countries. This is madness. This is madness. I don't mean we're likely to defend, we should defend, or the establishment would want us to defend. No, I'm talking about on a piece of paper. We are diplomatically, militarily obligated to defend. NATO, that's 30 countries right there. And then you've got all, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. I mean, I could go on. Then you've got all these countries in the Middle East. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on. So what I'm saying is, how many more countries? I mean, basically what? Would you just protect the whole world? I mean, at this point, seriously, let's not quibble with numbers. Okay, anybody attacks anybody on the planet, the United States is going to get involved. What are we, the Roman Empire? You know what happened to Rome. That's exactly what's going to happen to us. So, no, we have no business in Ukraine. Who controls the Donbas is of no concern to me. And look, this is the lie. This is what I can't stand about these Europeans. And I know this because Grace has a very dear friend in Italy, and she works in diplomatic circles. Long story short, Dave, the Europeans have convinced themselves, and this is Starmer, this is Macron, this is Scholz, Merz, Frederick Merz. Scholz was the previous chancellor. This is all of them. That today it's Ukraine. Tomorrow it's all of Europe. That Vladimir Putin, a la Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin, is just going to roll into Eastern Europe and roll into Central Europe. That he's like this modern day military juggernaut. Number one, the guy can't even conquer all of Donetsk, which is literally on the Russian border, which is ethnically Russian, Russian-speaking, historically part of the Russian Empire. Ukraine still controls a quarter of it. Putin is asking Zelenskyy to give him the quarter that the Russians don't control. And Zelensky's saying, blank you. No, I'm not giving you any territory you haven't conquered. By the way, I don't blame Zelenskyy on this. I wouldn't give it to Putin either. Why? So let me get this straight. You want to keep the territory you've conquered and the territory you haven't conquered? No, life doesn't work that way. But my point is, if this guy can barely get a slice of eastern Ukraine, and now you're looking at a million Russian dead, wounded, maimed, crippled, missing, the Russian economy is falling apart. You've got serious resistance to the war now in Russia. This guy's going to roll Poland. He's going to roll NATO. He's going to roll the United States. You want to talk about hysteria and panic porn. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy. So the whole premise that they're operating under, to me, is completely wrong. But if you really believe that, stop buying Russian oil and natural gas. If this guy's the modern day Hitler, as they keep saying, why are the Germans buying Russian gas? Why are the Italians buying Russian oil and gas? Why are the Brits buying Russian oil and natural gas? Why are the Finns and the Norwegians and the Swedes? They're all buying Russian oil and natural gas. So you're feeding Putin's war machine. You phonies, you frauds, you. So no, Dave, I am with you all the way. Look, if the Europeans want to defend Ukraine, that's your business. I wouldn't do it, but that's up to you. Listen, I'm America first. I'm not Ukraine first. I'm not Russia first. I'm not, just for the record, I'm not Croatia first. I'm not Germany first. I'm not England first. I'm not Canada first. I'm America first. Ukraine is not worth the bones of a single American soldier. Period. Full stop. No U.S. troops in Ukraine. No U.S. bases in Ukraine. No U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, listen now to President Trump. This was him yesterday, meeting with Zelenskyy and then doing a quick Q&A with journalists in the Oval Office, saying we're going to discuss the possible exchanges of territory. Basically, as Trump said, We're going to try to freeze the front line as it is now, where Russia, give or take, controls about 20% of Ukraine's territory. As I've been saying all morning, most of it is called the Donbas. It is in the eastern part of Ukraine, along with the peninsula of Crimea, which Putin absorbed under Obama in 2014. Listen now to Trump saying, we've got some maneuvering to do, some points to agree on, but if we can get there, I can set up the final meeting between myself, Putin, and Zelenskyy to close the deal. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad, actually, to look at them. And negotiating positions. President Putin, also, you have President of Ukraine, who is, you just met a little while ago, and we're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out.
So, and again, this broke this morning. It was being talked about heavily yesterday. It's now official. Trump is on the phone with both Putin and Zelenskyy. They are going to meet Putin and Zelenskyy sometime, they believe, next week. It could be 2 weeks, but they're trying for next week or in a week's time. And right away, have the two sit down. The location is yet to be determined. The European leaders want it somewhere in Europe. So they don't want it in the United States. Zelenskyy does not want it in Russia, obviously. They used to do at least several of these meetings in Turkey. I don't think the Europeans want it in Turkey as well. So it most likely will be in Europe, but Putin and Zelenskyy will meet face to face. And then within an hour or two after that meeting, Trump will come in. It will be a trilateral meeting. And it is there, whatever final points need to be resolved. Trump says he will be the difference maker, and we will have an historic peace deal. The war will be over. My question to you, what do you make of Trump's diplomacy? What do you make of what happened yesterday? And the big question, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm America first, should we secure Ukraine's borders? And should we send U.S. troops as a final guarantee to Ukraine to have a peace with Russia and to end the bloodshed? Linda in Medford. Thanks for holding, Linda, and welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Linda.
I've sort of written a little fantasy about this whole situation. Putin has said for many years, not NATO on his border. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that the prior administration told Zelenskyy to ask to join NATO. It's my understanding that when NATO was set up, they had to be asked to join. And we encouraged Zelenskyy to say that, knowing Russia would be upset and they could get millions and millions of dollars in blowback from this conflict.
Oh, Linda, there's no question. I mean, it's not even a, how do I say, and I put this in air quotes, a conspiracy theory. No, literally, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris flew to Europe, met with Zelenskyy, and they said to him, we want you to join NATO. And Zelenskyy, to be fair to Zelenskyy, not that I like the guy, Zelenskyy was the one who told Biden and Kamala openly. He said, but that's a red line. You sure Putin's going to agree to this? Like, he goes, I don't think the Russians are going to agree to this. And Biden said, don't worry about the Russians. That's literally what he said. Don't worry about the Russians. And then Zelenskyy was like, yeah, okay. I mean, look, if I'm the leader of Ukraine and the American president and vice president come to me and literally put, on the table, yeah, we'll take care of your security forever. And you'll be part of the most powerful alliance in human history, which, by the way, will definitely then guarantee your path to the European Union. Both, NATO membership and EU membership are closely intertwined. Well, yeah, I'm like, okay. And hold on, but the Russians aren't going to agree to this. I got the Russians covered. Really? You sure? Yeah, don't worry about it. I got the Russians covered. Okay. And so Zelenskyy then, very publicly, with Kamala Harris right beside him, said, we are now asking for formal admission into NATO. To which Putin then immediately responded. He responded, not just his foreign minister. He responded and said, this is a red line. I am warning you, do not cross it. This is unacceptable to Russia. He said it. This will trigger a war. We will have to invade and overthrow the regime in Kiev, the capital. They did it anyway. And boom, February 2022, Russia launched its troops and its invasion of Ukraine. So there's no question. Biden's puppet masters wanted a war with Russia. Soros wanted a war. The globalists wanted a war. Hillary wanted a war. The industrial complex wanted a war. The neocons wanted a war. And they wanted to provoke and incite Russia to the point that it would force them to invade. And then they could present themselves as, look, we're just defending Ukraine. And now it's 3.5 years later, and you've got 1 million dead or wounded on both sides. In fact, the real number most people think is 1.5 million. 1.5 million dead or wounded on both sides. And so the question that has to be asked of Zelenskyy, if I'm a Russian, I have a question to ask Putin. If I'm a Ukrainian, I have a question to ask Zelenskyy. If I'm a Ukrainian, the question I ask Zelenskyy is, was this all worth it? Like the death, the dying, the bleeding. Ukraine is broken and depopulated. There are 10 to 12 million refugees gone. Most of them are never going to come back. You've got hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian civilians and troops dead. Hundreds of thousands more maimed, crippled, wounded. Entire cities reduced to rubble. Was it all worth it? Is it really worth it? To join NATO, you buffoon, you comedian, you clown? And then the question, if I'm a Russian, is to Putin, there wasn't any other way? I'm not defending assassination. Please don't get me wrong. But what? You couldn't assassinate? I mean, you're Russia, for God's sakes. As if you guys don't assassinate people. You couldn't have assassinated Zelenskyy? You couldn't have tried a coup within the parliament or within Ukraine? You couldn't have put tremendous economic pressure and, forced the Ukrainians to give up their demand to join NATO? In other words, there were a million other options you could have pursued other than invading Ukraine. Now, all of these Russian dead bodies, and this is what you have to show for it? 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my friends, a lot of reaction. Everybody's weighing in. Of course, I don't blame you. These are historic times that we're living in, and this is definitely an historic deal. 617-266-6868. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470. 70470. This is from 781. Jeff, can you imagine the graftorama for these non-governmental organizations, NGOs, during Ukraine's reconstruction? That's a very good point. I mean, there's going to be so much money being stolen. This grift is going to go on for decades now. I mean, holy mackerel. Okay, one more, 617. Jeff, and I think this is very well said. Jeff, this proposed peace deal is like one of those short-term adjustable mortgages with an irresistible low interest rate that soon balloons into foreclosure territory. In other words, yeah, it ends the fighting. It ends the dying. Trump is, I'm telling you, he's definitely now getting the Peace Prize. He's getting that Nobel Peace Prize. There's nothing on earth can stop him now from getting that Nobel Peace Prize. And look, everybody breathes a sigh of relief. Look, I'm happy Russians aren't being slaughtered. Ukrainians aren't being slaughtered. Civilians, especially in Ukraine, aren't being massacred. Obviously, there's going to be a sense of triumph and jubilation and relief. But then comes the bill. And is it worth the price? That's the question. 617-266-6868. Tony in Florida. Thanks for holding, Tony, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff. Good
Hi,
morning,
Tony.
Jeff, my fellow patriot. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Tony?
Jeff, good, thank you. Good. Jeff, as I have mentioned to you before, I've been with President Trump, ever since he came down that escalator June of 2015. Proud to say I've never wavered. I've always trusted him. I continue to trust him 1,000% with everything he does. I'm America first like you and like President Trump is. Definitely America first. He's not going to put any of our men and women in the military in harm's way. Jeff, we're witnessing the greatest president in U.S. history. It is not even close. Lincoln, Washington, throw anybody at me. Okay, he's the greatest ever, point blank. And he's the greatest leader in world history, so we can go a step further. But I don't know anybody that could meet with President Putin on a Friday. He flies back in the wee hours of the morning. He probably landed back in Andrews Air Force Base sometime in Saturday in the middle of the night. And then on Monday, he's got the European leaders meeting him at the White House, sitting around a table wanting to make peace. He's ended 6 wars in 6 months, and this is going to be number 7. It's going to be peace through strength. I trust him 1,000%. And, here's a guy that he took a bullet for his country, Jeff. He gets up and he says, fight, fight, fight. I trust him all the way with our lives. He's not going to put us in harm's way. In fact, you might even see, as much as everybody, wants to criticize President Putin, and I know, the fog, this and that, all these things that people throw out there about him. But Trump is going to do something unprecedented with trade. I think he's going to make a trade deal with them also that's going to benefit our country. So I don't think that he's doing anything to put us in harm's way. I trust him 1,000%. He's the greatest president this country's ever known, and there'll never be another one like him. We are living in this time, witnessing this. It is so special. It's so amazing. I know we can go down that rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, what is he doing? And people are questioning him. I don't get that point of view, but everyone's entitled to their own opinion, Jeff. But I trust him 1,000%. I think he's doing a great job. It's unprecedented. I don't know anybody can do what he's doing. We're watching
and just to add to what you're saying, Tony, this is what is absolutely remarkable. He's 79 years old. I mean, look, I understand people. How do I say this? Today's 65 is not 65 of 20, 30 years ago. I get that. People are living longer. They're living healthier lives, more energetic lives than ever before. I get that. But still, 79 is still 79. And this guy is the limitless energy that he has. He really is a warrior for peace. And, people, again, this is like a little bit like when we invaded Afghanistan and how quickly the Taliban fell. I mean, I'm not talking about how they bungled the post-invasion occupation. That was a disaster. But the actual operation itself, I remember I was in the newsroom at the Washington Times, and it was just weird. All these reporters were like humdrum, like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, do you know that Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires? Do you know that Great Britain, at its absolute height, when it was the world superpower, couldn't conquer Afghanistan? You know how many times the Russians tried to conquer Afghanistan, and our troops did it in less than a month? Like, do you understand how impressive of a military operation this is? I'm like, hello? Like, no, you don't get, anyway, look what Trump has now done. He has moved the president of Russia to agree to security guarantees by the Europeans and the Americans. We know for a fact, British, French, German, Italian, Finnish military bases and troops in Ukraine. And the possibility of American bases and troops, which I hope does not happen, but with that possibility as well. He has gotten the Russian president to agree. He has gotten the European leaders, all the top leaders, to agree. They are going to share the bulk of the burden in terms of troops, weapons, equipment, financial aid, the whole shebang, as they say. And he's got Zelenskyy to agree to what he said he would never agree to, which is essentially ceding 20% of his country, giving up substantial territory. I mean, look, diplomatically, what he's done is incredible. Now, furthermore, and this I think needs to be said, what I don't understand from the media and the Democrats in particular, who are sniping at him, attacking him, excoriating him. So I just want to state the record, state the record, because it needs to be stated. Trump was not president when Crimea was annexed by Putin. Trump was not president when the Donbas was invaded and they almost took Kiev. Trump was not president when it was Biden that offered NATO membership to Ukraine. In other words, you can say whatever you want about Trump, but it was Obama that turned a blind eye when Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine and took Crimea. George W. Bush was president when Putin invaded Georgia and annexed, remember those two territories, Abkhazia and North Ossetia. So that was under Bush. It wasn't Trump who came up with that plastic red reset button, if you remember, that Hillary came up with. And she was like, here, press it to Putin, press it, ha, 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 ha. And they did that famous reset. That wasn't Donald Trump. That was either Hillary, George W. Bush, Obama, or Biden. So Trump's argument, and he's got a very strong argument. In fact, it's an irrefutable argument. I didn't make this mess. You did. You say I'm empowering Putin. You all empowered Putin. I'm the one that's getting Putin to make substantial concessions. None of you did. You gave him Crimea on a silver platter. You gave him the Donbas on a silver platter. You gave him parts of Georgia on a silver platter. You guys did nothing as Putin has been rampaging across that part of the world. And suddenly I'm the bad guy? Because I'm an actual mature statesman? And I say, if you want peace, you got to talk to both sides. So, yeah, Trump could call Putin a killer and a murderer and a thug and spit in his face a la Joey. And what? Is Putin going to sit down with him? No. And what does that mean? More people continue to fight, more dying, more death, more destruction. Someone's got to be the grown-up in the room. So I'm looking at President Trump and I'm like, you inherited a mess of all messes. So to me, when I look at the media criticizing, I'm going, you have no grounds to criticize Trump on anything. And never forget this, Tony. This is the one that sticks in my craw, as Khrushchev famously said at the United Nations, the bone in my throat that I can't swallow. After they pressed the reset button with Putin, after they turned a blind eye when he invaded Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine in 2014 and did nothing, literally nothing. Obama, nothing. Hillary Clinton, nothing. John Kerry, Jean-Francois, nothing. They all did nothing. They then turned around and used Russia to frame Trump as an agent of Moscow in order to destroy him personally and sabotage and destroy his presidency. And by doing that, let's be crystal clear, they got millions of people killed. Because what they did was they then destroyed the relationship with Russia itself. They deliberately turned Russia into not just an adversary, into a mortal enemy. What they did to Trump and lying about Russia collusion didn't just sabotage Trump and divide this country. It literally destroyed our relationship with Russia. And the inevitable result was the invasion of Ukraine and literally millions dead. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to call it the way I see it. The man that is most innocent here is Trump. Now, if I was advising him, I'll tell you what I would tell him. Stay out of it. I know you want peace. I know your heart's in the right place. I know you want to see an end to the dying and the death and the misery. I get it. But I'm telling you, if this involves U.S. security guarantees, or God forbid, troops on the ground, this is going to lead to World War III. Not today, not tomorrow, but down the road. Don't do it. Russia is exhausted. Ukraine is exhausted. Ukrainian troops now do not want to fight this war. They're not signing up to fight. Now many of them are openly defying their generals on the front lines. They've had it. Russian soldiers are bleeding. They've had it. Let them continue to fight until they're so exhausted that they'll be coming to you begging for a peace deal. Now, if you force a peace deal, they're going to blame you. In the end, they're going to blame you. And mark my words, Zelenskyy or whoever comes after him is going to use the fact that now the West and Europe and the United States are supporting Ukraine and defending Ukraine. They're going to start a false flag. They're going to want to get all that territory back because they know the only way they can beat Russia is if we fight their war. I know that part of the world. They're cunning. They're treacherous. They're liars. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the leadership. And they will say one thing to you and say the exact opposite thing behind closed doors. I don't trust Zelenskyy as far as I can throw him. I don't trust Putin as far as I can throw him. Stay out. It's none of our business. That's my strong advice to the president. But I hear you, Tony, and thank you very much for that call. And by the way, that's why Zelenskyy is begging for British troops, French troops, Italian troops, Finnish troops, American troops. His army is decimated. So if Ukrainian boys no longer want to fight to defend Ukraine, what now? We're going to send what? British boys, American boys, French boys, and now, of course, girls, men and women? We're going to send men and women to fight and die on behalf of Ukraine? I don't think so. I don't think so. You should. What did I say within 2 weeks of the war? I said it then. I said, if Zelensky's smart, make a deal now. Make a deal now, because you're not winning this war. Instead, egged on by Boris Johnson, egged on by Joey. Fight, 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 fight. Well, now it's 3.5 years later. Ukraine has lost God knows how many people. How many children, civilians, women, 10 million refugees, and they've lost even more territory, much more territory. Had they signed the deal within the first 2 weeks, you know what Putin's terms were in the first 2 weeks? Just don't get into NATO. That's it. That's it. And I pull all of my forces back to what they were, the 214 borders. He would keep Crimea, but everything that they had taken after February 2022, he would pull back from. They never would have lost Eastern Ukraine. Nope. Fight, fight, fight. Okay. Now it's 3.5 years later. You just lost 20% of your country, and essentially you've broken your country with 1 million wounded and dead. Genius. Genius. But Zelenskyy stole a lot of money. He did manage to steal a ton, and so did his cronies. So, to me, one of the conditions for a peace deal, elections. To me, that's the okay. You want everybody to undergird your security? Fine. Hold an election. Hold an election. And you'll see what happens. They're going to vote Zelensky's ass out. He won't even get 30% of the vote. 617-266-6868. Just my opinion. Hillary in Maryland. Thanks for holding, Hillary, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
As you've said many times, this isn't America first, and I think you just simply ask yourself a couple questions, like who benefits? Well, Trump is going to benefit because he's going to get all the accolades and, probably the Nobel Peace Prize, as you said. And the industrial military complex is going to benefit because I guess they're going to be selling a lot of weapons. Apparently that's part of the deal, but you still have Americans here, young Americans who can't afford to buy a home. I mean, it doesn't benefit us at all. When you ask yourself the stark question, is this America first, as you've illustrated, throughout the last hour, it's absolutely not America first. But the thing is, we were promised America first. And this other guy that called in a few minutes ago, he says he trusts Trump and no matter what he does, he supports him. I mean, if there's no pushback from MAGA or whatever, I mean, it seems like no matter, how much he insults our intelligence and kicks our teeth in with respect to keeping his promise about America first, he's still, celebrated. And I get the diplomatic thing, and I'm for that if it wouldn't involve us in any way. But he's put us on the hook, and that is not America first. And so I don't really understand what everyone is celebrating Trump for, because Ukraine and Russia, they're not American. And I really don't care, quite frankly. I care about my own country. And, he shouldn't have gotten involved. He can be a peacemaker, a moderator, a go-between, a negotiator. But if he's got to put us on the hook for it, how does that help us? It doesn't. And I'm really tired of it's everything that we were promised is just not coming to pass. I mean, I don't. He was supposed to be the guy that didn't want to get us involved in foreign entanglements, and yet that's exactly what he's been doing. So I'm very frustrated. I called last time. I called about the Epstein cover-up, and a lot of these, and as far as the deportations are going, I mean, it's not as mass as we would like to think it is. I think we think that because the law hasn't been enforced in so long. When we see any deportations, we think it's mass deportations. But I don't know. I'm left very disappointed, and I just don't understand why people will not hold his feet to the fire a little bit more. So that's my comment, basically. Maybe you can help me out and explain.
Well, Hillary, let me ask you, we got about a minute left. Have you soured on Trump? Has he lost your support? Or are you just disappointed, but you'll continue to support him?
He's kind of lost my support. I mean, he could regain it, but, the stuff he's doing now isn't helping. I mean, I want what was promised to America. I mean, to Americans. I want our country to be put first, and I'll even go a step further. It shouldn't be America first. It should be America only. When you look at the state that our country is in, you had even mentioned, sending our military around the world. And while we have a sealed border for now, I mean, our military would be best served being on our border.
Oh, I agree.
And I don't understand, everyone is still celebrating what Trump's doing, but how is that America first? You cannot tell me that it is. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. That's why I oppose sending troops to Ukraine or guaranteeing their borders. Frankly, that should be the job of Ukrainians if they want to defend it. 617-266-6868 is the number. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Yes, Jeff. I got to agree with the lady before. I mean, on some of those points she made. I mean, it's not America first. I mean, you got to look at this stuff. You had the Secretary of State, James Baker, promised in 1990 they wouldn't move eastward 1 inch. And you had the Western German Foreign Minister, Hans Dietrich Genscher. He repeated assurances as well. It's unbelievable. And the biggest problem here, what President Trump has, is his biggest problem is dealing with the EU, the UN, the EU, NATO, and the puppet, Zelenskyy. He's just a puppet. He's not making any decisions. It's the globalist controlling this guy, okay? It's as simple as that. People got to realize that besides all the billions of dollars we've been giving them, of American taxpayer money, his biggest moneymaker is the sex trafficking, child trafficking, killing of babies for organs, okay, and kids for pedophilia, women for sex slaves. Well over 60,000 babies, kids, and women, children missing, Ukrainian kids and women missing in Ukraine. That's what's going on. Ukraine is a cesspool for the globalist UN, EU, and NATO, and that's who Putin is fighting. Putin and Russia are fighting as well. The German Nazi Azov battalion neo-Nazi soldiers, and on top of it, the dirty, corrupt NATO Secretary Mark Rutte, who's a tool for the globalists, along with the German Chancellor, who you mentioned earlier, Patriotism. They're all involved. And
well, Dan, look, you're clicking on all cylinders, and to me, this is the question you have to ask yourself. George Soros is for this deal. Hillary Clinton is for this deal. I mean, just, that alone. Lindsey Graham is for this deal. I mean, I could go on and on. Bill Gates is for this deal. The European Union is for this deal. Keir Starmer, a woke left-wing globalist. Macron, a left-wing globalist. I could just go on and on, is for this deal. So if the most powerful globalists on the planet are for this deal, I'm looking at this, I'm like, and why? Why would we want anything to do with it? And the reason why they're for this deal is not because they want to end the war in Ukraine. Quite the contrary. What they want is they want the West to get involved in the war in Ukraine. And the way they're dragooning everyone is to say, fine, you guys from this point forward will be responsible for Ukraine's military and Ukraine's borders and Ukraine's security. Now, I'm telling you, you can take this to the bank. Putin does not want to restart a war. His military is exhausted. His economy is in shambles. The Russian people, Russian soldiers in particular, have paid a tremendous price. They're going to need a generation to recover and heal from this war. But I'll tell you who wants to blow it up as quickly as possible. It's Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy now has what he always wanted. He now has the West committed to defending his regime and his borders and his country. And all they need is one false flag. Literally, that's what it is now, after the deal is signed. Okay, and we're all on the hook now to defend Ukraine's borders. All he needs is one false flag, and he can take the fight to Russia. And the Russians cannot defeat the combined might of the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, effectively NATO light. They can't. Which means either they'll have to accept that they lose completely, lose all of that territory, which I'm telling you they won't, or they're going to have to resort to nuclear war. So the question everybody has to remember is this: what's in it for the globalists? Why all of a sudden now are they all wanting to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? Why? Because they suddenly like the guy? Because they've suddenly all done a 180 and had a mea culpa? A road to Damascus conversion? No. Because now they figure, fine, we rope the United States in. Once they're roped in, yeah, we'll give it 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. We'll even wait till Trump leaves power. So that's 3.5 years. That's okay. And then we launch a false flag or whatever. You can restart hostilities. And this time, the West is obligated to fight on behalf of Ukraine. And that's what they've wanted. And that will crush Russia, or it will force a nuclear war, which for them is the same thing, because it'll destroy that region, and then the globalists can come in and scoop it up. So that's why, to me, I'm like, look, fine. If the Europeans want to do this, that's their business. What I'm praying, what I'm hoping is that I know Trump's people are listening to the show. I know there are some people behind the scenes. J.D. Vance, I know for a fact, is fighting tooth and nail, saying no security guarantees and no military troops, U.S. troops on the ground. So what he's saying is we'll coordinate with the Europeans, we'll sell them the weapons, we'll give them all the firepower they need, but they do the security guarantees, they have the troops, they do the military bases, not us. Otherwise, we lose our freedom of maneuverability. Our hands are now tied. We are locked in to defend Ukraine. Now, just don't take my word for it. Look back at the last 1,000 years of Ukraine's history with Russia. Okay, let me put it to you this way, and tell me if you agree or disagree. Giving Ukraine an open-ended security guarantee and committing U.S. troops to defend Ukraine in perpetuity. Now, we don't know if that's exactly what Trump has agreed to. We're going to find out within the next couple of days. It is what Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland have agreed to. Trump did say he agreed to security guarantees, and he's still on the fence about U.S. forces. There is a huge debate now raging in the administration. Rubio wants U.S. troops in Ukraine, so does Witkoff. Vance is fighting very hard to nix that idea. But let's just take the worst case scenario. U.S. troops in Ukraine, and we guarantee their borders and their security, okay, along with the European leaders. It would be akin to you guaranteeing the home, the property lines of your neighbor. Now, you would say, look, Jeff, if my neighbor is attacked, sure, I'd love to help. Of course, I'd love to help. But if I give a blanket guarantee that I will defend my neighbor, in other words, an attack on my neighbor's home or an attack on his property is an attack on me, and I am obligated to defend my neighbor, you would say no. Why? Well, why would you say no? Well, I don't know, right? You'd say, did he provoke the fight? Is he asking me to fight his battle for him? Did he do something to cause it? Maybe he's in the wrong. Why am I put into a straitjacket where I lose all of my independence, my freedom, my autonomy, my maneuverability, the choice of whether it's in my interest or not in my interest, or it's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, to go and support and defend my neighbor. That's what George Washington said literally in his farewell address. He said to the United States, we have it all. This republic will not fail. But you have to understand one thing. No permanent alliances. It is death to the United States. And he warned us. He said, we're going to become so rich, so big, so powerful, and so wealthy that the European powers are going to want us to get involved in their wars to save their rear end, to save their bacon, to advance their interests in their, his words, their petty quarrels, their petty squabbles. He said, stay out. We have it all. Just stay out. Now, we have violated that again and again. But now, to me, we're really violating it, if this comes to pass. Now, do I want the fighting and the dying to end? Of course. Do I want to see Ukraine at peace? Of course. Do I want to see the civilians stop being shelled and killed and murdered? And as Trump really passionately, almost poetically, the way he talks about it, seeing Ukrainian boys and Ukrainian men, fighting men, Russian boys, Russian men. I mean, this is almost like the end of civilization, really. Slavic civilization. The slaughter, 5, 6, 7,000 every single week. It is senseless. So, of course, I understand. You're not a human being if you don't want to end this war. Of course, I understand. Trump's heart is clearly in the right place. And there are many things we can do short of giving up our independence and putting our troops at risk to end the war. But if the price is security guarantees and our troops in Ukraine, I'm sorry, for me, the price is too high. And I go back to my neighbor. I love my neighbor. I want to see my neighbor prosper. I would expect my neighbor to defend me, God forbid, if somebody broke into my home and wanted to murder me and my family, as I would try to defend them. But I'm not crazy to give that person a blanket security guarantee. I don't know. He may be in the wrong. He may have provoked it. He may have incited it. I have to know the reason why. I'm not just going to willy-nilly blindly commit to someone for 1,000 years or whatever. My family, think about it. This is a permanent commitment. This is like, my children will be responsible, my grandchildren, their my great-grandchildren, on and on and on. Do we really want that? Have we thought this thing through? Now, let me ask all of you, because this is now the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. And I think it's a great question. Who will blow up the peace deal first? Putin or Zelenskyy? In other words, say they sign a peace deal. Okay? There's a trilateral meeting. Everybody signs on the dotted line. Now the war ends. Who do you think will blow it up first? Putin, in other words, the Russians will try to reinvade Ukraine and keep going, or Zelenskyy and his regime trying to get territory back? Yeah, or who will be the reason why it's not signed in the first place, if it's not signed? A, Putin, B, Zelenskyy. Personally, I'm a B. I don't trust Zelenskyy as far as I can throw him. I think this guy wants this war to go on as long as it can. And the second he'll get a chance to refight the war, he'll refight it. Especially now that he has America, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy behind him. I mean, this is his chance to fight Russia forever, and this time win. But that's me. I want to hear from you. A. Putin, B. Zelenskyy. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN is in national ER. As always, you can vote via X. And yes, I was active on X yesterday. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, KUHNER. KUHN is in national ER. Lines are jammed. Jack in Indiana. Thanks for holding, Jack, and welcome.
Good morning to you, Jeff.
Hi, Jack.
Hey, I have a couple questions. I'm going to ask you a personal question. As you say, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Number one, the second we sent money and weapons into Ukraine, we were involved in this war. So all these people saying we shouldn't get involved, we're not involved. We are involved. Number two, Trump, at the back of his head, he knows, unless I got my history wrong from 10th grade, there's a thing called the War Powers Act, which means you have to go to Congress to get approval to go to war. Trump knows that. He's got that in the back of his head. He's not a stupid man. And third, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Let's make you president for a day. What would you do to stop this war?
Oh, what would I do? I would say, guys, go at it. That's what I would do. Someone has to win. Someone has to lose. I wouldn't get involved at all. I'm being brutally honest with you. No. At this point, if Ukrainians want to fight, look, what I would do is I would have come in my first day as president and said to Vladimir Putin, do you want to make a deal? Zelenskyy, do you want to make a deal? I'm not offering you anything. No one's offering you anything. Do you want to end the fighting? I'm willing to be a mediator. You don't want to end the fighting? Keep going. Fight until one side wins and the other side loses. That's, to me, how you end the war. Because ultimately, Jack, it's none of our business. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is a really good text. You can text the Kuhner Man, 70470, 70470. This is from 617. Jeff, this may seem off topic, but it actually is the kernel of the America First discussion that you're having, in my view. And it dovetails into your reference to the 100 plus U.S. military bases that we have spread out across the world. I am a 70-something baby boomer. I remember in my childhood, all of my friends with blue-collar dads and stay-at-home moms had modest homes of their own, a car, and vacation on the Cape every summer. What happened? 2 six-figure salaries can't support that anymore. By the way, that is very true. I tell you what happened. The wealth, the value of our labor has been extracted and spread around the world, with the globalists of every stripe taking their cut. That's what happened. And this deal in Ukraine typifies that. Excellent. I agree. Again, what does this have to do with benefiting Main Street? What does this have to do with defending our borders, protecting our troops, rebuilding our military? I mean, I understand that Trump got Zelenskyy to agree to buy a $100 billion contract, $100 billion worth of U.S.-made weapons and equipment, and the Europeans are going to front him the money, Zelenskyy the money. But our military is depleted. I mean, I appreciate that Trump's drumming up business. Please don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, Instead of arming the whole world, we've got to make sure that our military is armed to the teeth, that we're ready, God forbid, if we need to have a war with China or some big power adversary, that we have the capability to fight it and to win it. So, again, I look at this and I'm like, what's in it for the United States? I know what's in it for Russia. I know what's in it for Zelenskyy. I know what's even in it for the Europeans. But what's in it for us? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree? Okay, one more. And again, best audience in the business. I know. I say it all the time, but it's true, okay? Here it is. This is from, 603. Jeff, here is a point that hasn't been brought up. If a vote were held tomorrow, would the people who live in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbas region, would they overwhelmingly vote to become part of Russia, or would they vote to remain a part of Ukraine? Let's not forget that since the Obama-Soros-funded coup, Ukraine forces were routinely shelling and murdering the ethnically Russian people of this region, the Donbas, by the thousands. I wonder what they would choose. What say you? Oh, I think this is not even a matter for debate. The majority would definitely vote to join Russia. Not Ukraine itself. I'm talking about the Donbas region. There's no question. Historically, it was part of the Russian Empire. Much of that area, they're ethnically Russian. They're all Russian speaking. They orient themselves towards Moscow, towards Russian culture, Russian civilization. They want no part of Ukraine. They certainly want no part of the West. Now, for the rest of Ukraine, that's a different story. No question. But that's the fundamental division, the chasm within within Ukraine itself. But no, there's no question. If you were to hold an honest, free, fair referendum, a ballot question in eastern Ukraine, and say, would you rather join Mother Russia or would you rather stay in Ukraine? They would join Mother Russia. I don't think it'd even be close. So that's another problem I have with Zelenskyy. He claims to have a mandate to speak for Ukrainians. He doesn't. He hasn't held elections in over 5 years. He refuses to hold new elections under the guise of, well, it's a war. And because it's a war, we can't hold an election. So in fact, here, Trump confronted Zelenskyy on that very point and actually was teasing Zelenskyy, kind of trolling Zelenskyy. But my point is, before I even get to that, there's no question. He has no mandate to represent Ukraine, and he certainly has no mandate to represent the ethnic Russians and the Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine. There's no question about it. That's why, to me, one of the key preconditions for any of this is let elections be held in Ukraine. Ask the Ukrainian people themselves, because the recent polls show 70% of Ukrainians want a negotiated settlement. They don't want the war to continue. They're exhausted. They're tired. They don't want to fight anymore. They don't want to send more of their men and women to fight and die in the Russian meat grinder. And they're willing to give up territory if it means peace. Now, quickly, listen now to Trump, because he's saying, look, his point is, well, if you can use the excuse of a war to never hold an election, well, what if I start a war? Does that mean I don't have to step down in 2028? Does that mean I can just say, no, we're suspending the elections in 2028 and, we'll hold elections maybe in 2032? So I can stay in power for another 4 years after my term ends. All I got to do is fight a war or start a war. Roll cut 10, a mic.
legal elections.
So you say
we are ready.
during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
No, this is
Look at it. Look at Zelenskyy laughing. You like this idea, huh? Me shyster. You see how I get around elections? And your dumb media here in U.S., they just parrot what I say. I just say, yeah, I make myself dictator. How? I don't hold elections. Why? Because we have war. So as long as we have war, I stay in power forever. And I steal, Donald, and I steal, and I steal. Donald, you know I have more billions than you. Yes, I have more money. No, I'm talking U.S. dollars, not rubles, dollars. I have more money than you, Donald. You is legitimate, as you say in America. Me is all stealing and stealing and more stealing. But now I'm richer than you, Donald. You have 6 billion. I have 8 billion. Thank you, Donald, and thank you, American taxpayer. 617. And they're going to give him hundreds of billions more. Okay? If you can believe it. And that's their idea of quote-unquote peace. Bruce in Woburn. Thanks for holding, Bruce, and welcome. Bruce, what do you make of this, my friend?
I've been waiting a long time to say this, Jeff. We have no reason to be anywhere but right here. Screw Zelenskyy. Russia's going to do what he's going to do. I trust nobody but a president-in-chief. And I don't listen to the media. I don't listen to all this rhetoric and all this bull crap. He's Hitler. He's this. He's that. We've saved the world, Jeff. Our country, World War I, World War II, Korea, we've been there. Our guys have been dying and dying and dying, and our people, our parents, our children have been crying and crying and crying. I'm sick of this crap, Jeff. USA comes first.
Oh, I agree. Look, Bruce, this is, Jack in Indiana asked me, and he said, how would you end the war between Russia and Ukraine? And my answer is, it's not our business to end the war. How has this suddenly become our problem that we have to end the war? I mean, I blame Biden for inciting it and provoking it. There's no question. But in the end, Zelenskyy made the application to join NATO. If he had half a brain as the leader of Ukraine, I'm telling you right now, if I was his advisor in Kiev, the capital, I'd say, are you mad? Well, Biden is telling us not to worry about the Russians. I don't care what that senile buffoon says. Are you an idiot, Volodymyr? You understand what Putin is going to do? And any Russian leader, it's not Putin, any Russian leader would say it is unacceptable for Ukraine to be in NATO. You know that. So you're going to risk a potential massive war? When, by the way, we are militarily unprepared and unable to stop the Russians should they invade? Are you crazy? No, we don't enter NATO. We don't need to enter NATO. What do we need NATO for? Instead, that idiot went ahead with his plan to join NATO, and now 3.5 years later, we got to bail him out? I don't think so. Now, Bruce, you know this better than anybody. We have given Ukraine, just the United States alone, $200 billion. $200 billion. The Europeans, to be fair to the Europeans, they've given about another 100 to 150 billion. That's $350 billion. Okay, with a B. The Ukrainians should have taken Moscow. Do you know how much money that is? By the way, just so that everybody understands, because I don't want to, just keep throwing numbers, but do you know how much Russia spends every year on its military budget? Look it up, please. Don't take my word for it. 50 billion. 50 billion with a B. 50. We gave Ukraine in 3 years $350 billion. 7 times what the Russians spend annually on their military budget. And we gave them the best. I don't mean to insult the Russians, but our tanks blow their tanks away, not those rust buckets that the Russians have. Our Patriot missiles are the best in the world. Our drones are the best in the world. Our equipment is the best in the world. We gave them the finest military equipment. Plus, we sent advisors. Our CIA, the Brits, the French, NATO, we sent our finest advisors to train their military. So the question, if I'm a Ukrainian now, this is what I'd be saying. Hold on. The West, led by the United States, gave us $350 billion to fight and win this war. And we're kissing away 20% of our territory? And there's no money left? Again? Where did the weapons go? Where did the money go? Because frankly, with this kind of money, we should have taken Moscow and St. Petersburg. We should be at the gates of the Kremlin. They should be suing peace with us, saying, no, we'll give you 20% of Russia's territory. Please stop. Stop before you take the capital. We don't want to lose Moscow. And I'll tell you where the money went. It was stolen. That's where the money. Ask Zelenskyy. He'll tell you. Him, his cabal, his cronies, kickbacks to Biden, kickbacks to Lindsey Graham, kickbacks to Pelosi, kickbacks to Mitch McConnell. All of these politicians here, these greedy politicians who were lining their pockets. So I understand Jack's point. I do. My question is, we've already given them $350 billion. How much more do you want, man? We got a $37 trillion debt. We're giving them money we don't even have. And now what? It's not enough? So now I got to give them U.S. troops. I got to give them blood. Now I got to secure their borders forever. We've got to give them security guarantees forever because you guys stole and looted all the money and you sold military equipment. I mean, this is an irrefutable fact. On the black market. Our missiles, our ammunition, our tanks were ending up in the freaking Congo. Given to Ukraine, sold on the black market, they pocket the money, and the weapons go to Congo and other hotspots around the world. That's why Putin now is going to get 20% of Ukraine's territory. Look, I'm not a violent man, and I'm saying this figuratively. There should be a trial, and he should go to jail or a legal execution. But I'm telling you, if the truth comes out in Ukraine, I don't know how the Ukrainian people don't hang Zelenskyy, like the way they hung Mussolini in Italy at the end of the war. You stole and plundered so much that now you lost 20% of our land. And you've cost us hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians. So you and your fat cat friends can get rich, and I mean obscenely rich. It wasn't enough to be multimillionaires. No, you guys got to be multi-billionaires. Dachas, yachts, ships, homes in Miami, homes in Monaco, homes in Switzerland. You got to have 5, 6, 7 mansions, you greedy bastards. So, no, I don't want to give him any more of our money. I don't want to give him any more military aid. I don't. You should have thought of the consequences when you asked to join NATO. And I'm not pro-Putin, far from it. If you beat him on the battlefield, that's up to you. But how is this our concern? Now, look, let me be even more honest with you, like I'm in the confessional. If we had a completely secure border and we had troops all over our southern and northern border and there's no more fentanyl coming in, no more drugs, we've got this thing permanently sealed. We've got God knows, tens of thousands of troops helping with mass deportations. We've cleaned out every single illegal alien. And our streets are finally safe and crime is finally down in all of our big cities. And we're running balanced budgets and even budget surpluses. And inflation is down to zero or close to zero. And our middle class and working class is thriving again. And our country is booming again. And we are truly at peace and prosperity. Okay, maybe we can help out a little bit here or there. We've got so many problems to fix at home. And again, I go back to my point that I made an hour ago, which, these leftists are going crazy, by the way, in these emails to me. They're losing their minds because they can't deal with my argument. We are offering security guarantees to over 100 countries. 100. 100. We have hundreds of military bases all over the world. We are the policemen of the world. But our cities are overrun with illegals. Our cities are so unsafe that in most major cities, nobody wants to go out after 7 o'clock at night. Our own citizens are being raped and murdered and trafficked, and they're overdosing due to fentanyl by about 100,000 every single year. I mean, our country is turning into a third world hellhole in large parts of it. And we're playing superpower. We're playing the Roman Empire. In places around the world that most Americans, and not as an insult, just who the hell cares where the Donbas is? By the way, they're talking about 2 cities now in Donetsk. That's that region. Putin wants all of it. That's right on the Russian border. I'm telling you, I've read books on Ukraine, history of Ukraine. I've done a complete minor field in Russia and Eastern Europe when I was doing my PhD coursework. I've read at least several hundred books on that Russian history and Eastern European history. Not to brag, I'm just trying to tell you. And I don't even know these 2 freaking cities. I know many cities in Ukraine. I'm like, what? And they're going on like, no, this has to be defended at all costs. All right. Kramatorsk is one of them. And Slavonin is the other one. I mean, I never even heard about this in discussing the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union in World War II, where they invaded through Ukraine. I never heard of these cities. And they're like, no, we can't give this up. Absolutely not. We need bases there. We need Americans there, Brits, French, Finnish, Italians, Germans. Everybody's got to be there. I can't even find it on a map. That's how inconsequential this is. I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm with you all the way, man. It's time to put America and Americans first. Period. Full stop. Okay. Some very good positive developments, my friends. It looks like this show and others, it wasn't just this show, believe me, but this drumbeat of no U.S. troops in Ukraine, we're not going to stand for it. Apparently, President Trump got the message. This is now breaking. President Trump now has officially ruled out sending U.S. military forces, U.S. troops, to Ukraine as part of any U.S. security guarantees to that country. However, he says 2 things. Number one, there will be security guarantees from the United States to reinforce the security guarantees from Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland. So we are going to be guaranteeing the new borders of Ukraine. Secondly, he says that the ground troops will be all European troops, primarily British and French soldiers, with a contingent from Italy and Finland, and maybe even some Germans. But definitely it's going to be the British and the French, with some Italians and Finnish soldiers. They're looking at now 40, 50, 60,000 of those troops being stationed in Ukraine with several military bases. However, he says that the United States, to back up the European troops in Ukraine, would provide what he says air protection. In other words, the U.S. Air Force would have most likely at least one, if not two, bases in Ukraine to provide air cover should there be a war again between Russia and Ukraine, and if European troops or Ukrainian troops are under attack or under siege. He says that he put it, you have my assurance, there won't be American boots on the ground defending the border in Ukraine. However, he said, I will provide air cover or some type of air protection, and that the air power would come primarily from the United States. Quote, we are willing to help them, meaning the Europeans and Ukraine, with things, especially if you could talk about by air, because there's nobody that has the kind of stuff that we have. In other words, the kind of sophisticated Air Force planes, fighter jets, and air power. So he says that the Europeans will handle the boots on the ground. We will handle the air power in the skies to protect and police Ukraine's sovereignty, Ukraine's borders, and to protect European and Ukrainian troops should they ever be attacked by Russians. So it's not U.S. troops, but it's U.S. planes. My question to you, deal or no deal? Is that enough of a dilution to satisfy you? Should we have U.S. Air Force bases or air bases, at least one, but probably several in Ukraine? And should we be using our Air Force to police and protect Ukraine's borders and to protect the new European peacekeeping troops that will be inserted into that country to prevent a future Russian attack? 617-266-6868. Adriana in Hyannis. Thanks for holding, Adriana, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Very good. How are you, Adriana?
Good. You know what? I'll be honest. I was not expecting this updated. You completely took me off guard with this update. But my opinion is, no matter what, we just should not get involved. Trump campaigned on us not getting involved, and I understand it's our Air Force, but that's still our boys and girls handling that, and I don't agree with that. I'm a mom, and I've actually been talking to my kids about actually encouraging them to enroll into the military. But after hearing everything that's going on, I was like, absolutely not. So now I got to backtrack that, and I'm going to be talking to my kids today. But I'm sorry about that, kid. But I'd rather my kids go to school, trade school, or something. But at this point, I don't want my kids going into the military. It's I love my kids too much, and I am not going to have their blood shed for Ukraine. Absolutely not. That's just not going to happen. He campaigned on not having us involved, and that's what I voted for. I voted for him 3 times. And don't get me wrong, I love President Trump. He has been amazing. He is definitely the best president in the entire history. But I'm in complete disagreement. If Ukraine wants to continue fighting with Russia, let them solve their problems themselves. Zelenskyy, I don't trust him not one bit. He's a little worm, and I'm just so dumbfounded, just so upset right now because I don't trust him. I don't trust Zelenskyy not one bit, And I feel that somehow, like, and of all people, Hillary Clinton and Bill Gates and all those losers, if they're all for it, there's something going on. And it's kind of like, okay, what is it? How is it benefiting them? And why should we be sacrificing our children just to go fight? I just foresee it. This war is just not going to come to an end. It's just going to involve our children. And I'm not happy with that. And like I said, I've been talking to my son, especially my son, because he was actually thinking of going into maybe the military. And I was like, oh, honey, you know, President Trump, he's making the military great. And, you know, we're going to be out of wars. But hearing this, I'm like, oh, no, absolutely not. So I'm having that conversation with my son and my daughter today. Be like, you know what, scrap that idea. And I'd rather pay or send them to, like, trade schools or just going to college.
Oh, I hear you. No, look, Adriana, you're making a lot of sense. You got to do what's best for you and obviously your children and your family. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I think now pretty much we know what the American role is going to be in security guarantees and in Ukraine's post-war future, should there be that trilateral summit that Trump is now arranging, probably next week. Trump says there will be no U.S. boots on the ground, which is great. That I'm happy about. However, he says the United States will guarantee Ukraine's borders. So we will be military committed to defend the borders of Ukraine should Russia attack or should war break out between those two countries again, along with Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, what is now being called NATO Light. Trump says, however, even though the Europeans will have the troops in Ukraine, we're looking at least 50 to 60,000 of them, the United States will provide the air power, probably an Air Force base, maybe 2 Air Force bases. We will provide the fighter jets. We will provide the air cover. So in case something does happen to these European troops, they will have protection from the air, and America will back them with air superiority, shooting down Russian fighter jets, and if need be, bombing Russian targets. Now, my question to you, it's a bit more of a diluted security guarantee than what they were talking about yesterday. It's not our troops in Ukraine by the tens of thousands, but it still will be our pilots flying our planes in bases based in Ukraine to defend that country's territory, borders, and sovereignty. Agree, disagree. 617-266-6868. CJ in Boston. Thanks for holding, CJ, and welcome.
Thank you very much for taking the call, Jeff.
Hi, CJ.
I guess the question President Trump needs to be asked is, what is he going to do when the first American dies in Ukraine? Because I'll bet you dollars to donuts between the mainstream media and these people pushing for war, they're going to demand that U.S. boots be put on the ground. It's been discussed on how President Trump has changed since the 2 assassination attempts against his life. I think he needs to be reminded it's okay to have compassion. But if you have any more compassion, Mr. Are you there?
CJ, you're breaking up on us. We didn't hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. Please, if you can just start from the beginning. So you said the issue of compassion, and then we lost you. Please. So the issue of compassion. Go, my friend.
I would say that if President Trump gets any more compassion against his enemies, maybe he should consider putting on a white collar, getting on the pulpit, and preaching Jesus. You don't have compassion against your enemies when you're out to win. Now you're aware of the fact that the president once threatened to bomb Moscow. Instead of putting American troops and American equipment in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, what he should be doing is putting nuclear missiles on the ground. Maybe 10 or 12, half of them pointing to St. Petersburg and half of them pointing to Moscow. That may give the Russians a second thought. As you know, in 1994, they had nuclear missiles. But under the Clinton administration, they removed their defenses. Had they had those missiles today, then Russia would have never attacked. America is winning. I mean, we shut down the border. We've stopped basically domestic terrorism in our capital. We're taking in tens of billions of dollars in tariffs every month to knock down our deficit. We do not need to get involved in any way, shape, or form in Ukraine. There is no way. This is a European problem. And for months, the head of the German government is stating that they don't want to rely on Donald Trump anymore in the United States of America. That Germany is going to be the strongest military power in the euro. So I don't know what's going on here, Jeff, but I can tell you that if there are Americans die there, that there will be boots on the ground. We have the Democrats running scared. You've got Schiff with the possibility of going to jail. You've got Hillary Clinton actually saying that she would be okay with the president to win the Nobel Peace Prize. I can't speak for the president, Jeff, but if I could, you know what I would say, don't you?
What difference does it make?
No. I would say that hell with the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll stand for the Monica Lewinsky Award.
No, look, CJ, I think you really put your finger on it. Look, if an American pilot gets shot down, again, they signed a deal. Let's just play it out. So, okay, there's a temporary, there's peace now. Ukraine is rebuilding. The Europeans are surging troops. We've got air bases there. The Russians are licking their wounds. Everything hardens. The front lines now freeze. Russia annexes that 20% of the Donbas. Within 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as sure as the sun will rise, there's going to be some kind of an incident. There is. And then the Ukrainians will fire into Russia. The Russians will fire into Ukraine. And then our men and women are policing the skies. One of our planes is going to get shot down. And the moment one of our planes is going to get shot down, the moment one American pilot is either wounded or especially if he or her is killed, you're right. The media is going to demand revenge. Demand revenge. The Ukrainians will demand revenge. And that's to start the war again. But this time, Ukraine will start the war not alone against Russia, but now backed by the full might of the United States, of Britain, of France, of Italy, Finland, Germany. And that's a war the Ukrainians believe they can win because we'll be doing the fighting and the dying. The question is, will the Russians then surrender? And I'm telling you, I don't think they'll surrender. That's why I believe they love this deal. That's why they love it that Trump is offering security guarantees. Because they see this as the road to World War III. They have been itching for NATO to fight a war against Russia. Well, they're not getting NATO. They're getting NATO light. But it's the same thing. And that's why I'm with you, CJ. Just stay out of it. It's none of our business. It's none of our concern. We have no interest there. If Ukraine wants to continue to fight, that's their business. If the Europeans want to stick their nose, that's their business. But sorry, we've got 20 million illegals to deport. That's where our military should be used. Don't send them to Ukraine. Send them here to deport all the illegals. CJ, thank you very much for that call, as always. Mary Kay in the great state, actually the Commonwealth of Virginia. Thanks for holding, Mary Kay, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, perfectly. I got so nervous I didn't even say why I was calling, and they just said, hold on, turn off the radio. Okay, I am a Needham, Massachusetts resident since I was 5 years old. our high school was wonderful. I remember Metro coming in. But right now I have a son and a son-in-law, and all my 4 grandchildren are living a military family life. I was a single mom. I owned a house for 30 years, and I almost lost it because of Obama.
Mary Kay, can you do me a favor? By the way, you're doing great. There's no reason for you to be nervous. You sound phenomenal. Please hang on. I'm up against a hard break. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let's go right back to Mary Kay in Virginia. Mary Kay, I've got to ask you right out of the gate, what do you think now? These are the outlines of a final peace deal. Trump says he's willing to have the United States give Ukraine security guarantees. We will defend its border if they're attacked. And he's even willing now to have air bases in Ukraine, have U.S. air power, U.S. pilots, U.S. fighter planes, defend and protect the European troops that will be stationed there as well. Good idea, bad idea? What say you, Mary Kay?
Oh, Jeff, really long-time listener. I love all your callers, and I listen to you like, you have no idea, 4 hours every day, afternoon before, now mornings. I always agree with you 1,000%. Okay. I haven't been able to talk to my son about this. Not that I can get any info, obviously, but I like the idea of Air Force. I don't want boots on the ground, but I don't like guarantees. I understand these long wars, but I just feel like Trump is a 3D chess player, and there's so much that we don't know. Tulsi Gabbard coming out with so much information, like, on everything. It's just, gosh, it's only been 7 months. Okay, so, I don't know how the military feels about it, but how many soldiers have signed up since Pete Hegseth took over and Trump came into office? And I'm at Fort Belvoir, and I didn't want to go into Washington. I want to find out if I can get tickets to the 250th. Like, I love Trump. And my son's been in Iraq, Afghanistan. My son-in-law has been in South Korea. And my daughter and my daughter-in-law have had to raise 2 kids alone. Okay. My son has a neurological problem. And I don't want to get into that because that's not what it's about. But my son just said to me the other night, if he wasn't disabled, he'd be willing to go into Gaza. He's U.S. Army infantry. So the ones that believe in it, they believe in Trump, they believe in Pete Hegseth. I believe in Tulsi. Yeah, Pam Bondi's been slow, but now that everything's coming out, oh gosh, the amount, and I am so excited because you've been talking about this for at least 15 years. And, you've been right. So I love you, Jeff.
Well, Mary Kay, listen, thank you so much for your call. Please give my best to your son, to everyone in your family, and tell them all thank you for your service. You sound like you have an absolutely remarkable, I say boy very affectionately. You have a remarkable man for a son. And to me, he's a great patriot and a great hero. And honestly, you should congratulate yourself because that's a tremendous honor to have a son who served in the military, and he served both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And please make sure he gets the help from the VA that he needs, because he deserves it, he's earned it, and frankly, he's entitled to it. Mary Kay, God bless you, and please don't be a stranger. Call again. And if you want to know where I'm coming from, I don't want to see any more of our soldiers have a neurological disease. And look at him. Even after all that, he's willing to follow Trump to the gates of hell if need be. She mentioned he's willing to go to Gaza. I mean, that's The best of the best are our veterans and those who serve. And I don't want them to be caught up and killed or maimed or wounded or disabled in another war. To me, leave them at home. Let them protect the homeland here. Let others fight and die for their country. We've done enough fighting, dying, and bleeding. But that's me. Bobby in Saugus, I've got less than a minute. I hate to do this. The floor is yours. Go.
Jeff, God bless you for all you do. And there is no clear and present danger in Ukraine. There is no clear and present danger in Iran. And we just don't belong in either place fighting any of their wars. We have enough problems here. You can't even walk in downtown Boston after 7 o'clock. And if you're lucky enough to get through all the potholes to get there.
Great way to end the show. I just wish Mike had given you another 5 seconds to finish your point, but you're right. It's time, America, it's time to come home. It's time to come home.